Hello everybody and welcome to my latest video. Today I'm going to be talking about classics, just sort of in general. 3 that I have read and 3 that I have not read, but really want to get to. So without further ado, we'll jump right in, starting with the ones that I have read. To start, we have Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. This book was on my list for several years. I was in a book club in high school with one of my high school teachers, and this is the book that we were supposed to read. None of us actually did read it, and so I've had it on my shelf since I was about 16. I'm 24 now and just read it, to give you some sort of idea. So it's been sitting on my shelf for 8 years now, and I finally read it. I am so proud of myself for having read it. Not because of the length, it's really nothing. Just because of the length of time it's spent on my shelf untouched. This was a very different book than what I expected. I expected sort of a more Pride and Prejudice type of feel, where there's some problems but not that many, but she actually just leaves, and if I remember correctly, he loses a hand, and there are some weird things that happen in this book, but it was a good book. It was well written, it was enjoyable, and I liked the fact that it wasn't just your stereotypical romance. So that was actually surprisingly enjoyable. The next book is one that a lot of people don't necessarily like. They don't like the author, and that is Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. The reason people don't like his books are that they tend to be just the littlest bit really depressing, and that's fair. That is completely fair. This book is so disheartening. It makes you want to just sit down and cry for several hours. I didn't, but it makes you want to. It's about a family in the Great Depression, and they lose everything, because it's the Great Depression, and a lot of people lose everything. And it follows their story. It's definitely kind of a journey story, so if you don't like those, do not read this book. But if you don't mind being depressed for a while afterwards, and just realizing that there is no hope in life, read this book. Or if you just enjoy good writing and don't mind being depressed, also read this book. It's really good writing. And the third classic that I have read, this one I am rather proud of because it is Lamort de Arthur. And first of all, look at this beautiful copy. Oh my gosh, I just couldn't resist buying it because it's gorgeous. And second of all, this book is over 1,000 pages. This copy isn't, but the copy I read was. It was 1,100 or so. This copy is only about 830. But it is about King Arthur and his round table. That's all you really need to know. It's also written in 1400s English. Well, late 1300s, early 1400s, which makes it a little bit harder to read than your average book, even compared to John Steinbeck or Charlotte Bronte. I did get the author right. But I really love Arthurian sagas. I watch Merlin on BBC over and over and I cry every time, and I have multiple books about Arthur and Merlin and I keep trying to find more, but this is just sort of one of those originals and I really wanted to read it, so I did, and it was definitely worth reading if you like Arthurian sagas and you don't mind very early English. But now we'll get on to the books, the classics that I have not read, but that I desperately want to get to before the end of this year. We'll see if that happens. First off, we have The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas. I have read The Count of Monte Cristo. I read that years ago in high school, and that was a really good book. I know the plot of The Three Musketeers because there's so many remakes and spoofs and what have yous on this book. I know he's a good author, I know he has good plots, I know I like the plot of The Three Musketeers. I just haven't picked this book up yet because, in true fashion, there's so many books to read and I can't ever really make up my mind. If I could read all of the books that I want to all at once, that would be great, but that's not possible because I only have one head. So this is on my to-read list sometime in 2017. The next book is Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. I read War and Peace in high school and absolutely loved that book once I figured out who was who and how they were related, because you definitely need a family tree for that book. But I've heard Anna Karenina is very depressing. I watched the movie, which was a little strange, but I also really just like Russian authors, and I know he's a good writer, so I'm going to read this, whether or not it is depressing. And beyond that, I have read Steinbeck, so it's okay. And the last book is La sombra del viento, or The Shadow of the Wind, by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. There we go. Yes, I'm going to read it in Spanish. Yes, I speak Spanish, although it's really rusty at this point. And that is part of the reason I haven't read this yet, is because it is in Spanish, and I am bound and determined to read this book in its original Spanish. I don't want to read it in English. And since Spanish is my second language, it takes a little bit more effort to get into it and to get through it, because I have to look up a fair number of words, especially having not spoken Spanish in months. But this is on my list. I will read it before 2017, the end of 2017, and I don't know, I'm just really excited about it. So there's that. Now, those are all of my books for this video, the 3 classics I have read and liked, and the 3 classics I have not read but will get to before the end of 2017. Maybe in September. That would be a good time. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!